Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Mem Aleph. We are going to begin on the bottom of Mem Amud Beis by the new Mishnah, new Parak. Kol Tzlamim. All images are asurin, and Rashi points out they're asur b'hana. Why? Bimnei shehein nevadim, because they were used for actual worship. Pam achas b'shana, even if it was only done once a year. Divrei Rabbi Meir. We'll have to understand what's the significance of how often it was worshipped. The Chachamim oimrim enu asur elo kol sheyesh biyado makel o tzipor o kadur. The only type of image is asur is if it's holding a staff, a bird, or some type of sphere or globe, which we'll discuss the significance of that. They're holding anything. Okay, so on this, the Gemara is going to explain what's the significance about these particular items again. Okay, so says the Gemara. So understand, if this is even used once an entire year, but it was still used for Avodah Zarah, so who cares if it was once a year? Why would the Rabbanan make a distinction? So Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Rabbi Yochanan b'mkam Shura Meir hayu oivden oisa pamachas b'shana. It means in the place of Rav Meir, it was actually worshipped once a year. Rav Meir dechai shel miyuta goes to sharmim kaimos ata asumakoy. So even though it's true that it's only in his place that this was once a year, but he's geyser all other places as well, because he's chayish l'miyuta. Says Rashi, "V'chachamim oimrim enu neved ela mi sheyesh biyadai v'chad esfirulhu de nevadim." So it's possible that again they didn't actually use this. V'rabbanan doli chayish l'miyuta l'gozu sharmin kaimus atu oisum makai. So that's the basic explanation. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So he says as follows: Ba'an darti shemalachim. If we're dealing with an image of a deceased, beloved king, sheninu, that's what we're learning. So that is something in which there's a high likelihood that a person is actually using that statue as a form of Avodah Zarah because of their close relationship, and they probably are worshiping and bowing to it. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana Rav Yochanan Oimdin al Pesach Medina sheninu. It's when it's at the opening of the, let's say, the city gate. So therefore, when people walk by, they worship it. Mem Alpha Manalf. Omer Rabba Machlokes Bishel Kfarim. The whole Machlokes is if it's a village. Of a Bishel Krachim, a big city, V'kol Mutar, my timer, L'noi Avdilhu. Maybe it was just put there for beautification, but it actually was not used for Avodah Zarah. So Mi'i Kamandi Ermo L'noi Ka'avdilhu. So is there actually a Mandir that says that was actually just made for beautification? Tikfarim vadai miflchinhu abduhu. We know for sure when it comes to Kfarim, what was it there for? It's a small little village. They're definitely using it for Avodah Zarah. Now Yin Marhachi Yamar Amar Rabba Machlokas B'Shel Krachim Gaval B'Shel Kfarim Divrei Kol Asurim. Okay. So makil, what's the whole notion with this staff or stick? He rules over the entire world just like this stick. Sipor shetaifas as atzmo tachas kol olam kul katsipor, that it's basically above the whole world, just like a bird. It's can fly anywhere it wants, basically. Says Rashi, Loshin Gena. Okay. Sipor, that's a bird. Kadur, this ball, which is like a globe or something like that, a sphere. Shetaifas says atzmo tachas kol kulo kikador. He's basically saying I have the whole world, got the whole world in my hands, right? So those images are probably forms of Avodah Zarah, or used for Avodah Zarah. Tana haisifu lehen sayif atara v'tabas. Some actually add other things that they're holding, like a sword, a crown, or some type of a wreath or a ring. So Saif, what's the significance of a sword? Mikar Savar, listen Ba'alma. So originally, maybe it was just like thieves. Basically, he's saying that he can kill, and he has like this power over the whole world. Okay. Atara, this reef, Mikara Savar Gadil Kalili Ba'alma. It's just some growth. Savar Katar Lamelach, just like a reef that's put on the head for a king. Tabas, Mikar Savar Ishtaima Ba'alma. It's just like an agent bringing a stamp. That he can like seal everyone's fate for death. So Tana field sword, a field kisim, doesn't matter what it is, going to be a rock, a twig, everything. So by Rav Ashi, Tafas biyado tsayamahu. What if the image is holding excrement, waste? Miamrin kol yama zilu ba'apei kitsaya. Maybe he's just saying that everyone else is like waste compared to this image. Or Odilma, who miu dezil ba'apei kol yama kitsaya. Take. Maybe he's just saying that it's lowly like soa. So that we don't know. Okay, let's look at question 1. Eut salam masula kol yam. So sheish biyado makel or kadur tzipor, or maybe they added also the tzayaf atar and tabas, and also shel kfarim. If it's in a village, then most likely that it's not for noy, it's not for beautification purposes, and therefore it is asur. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see the next Mishnah. Mastisim hamoitze shivrit salamim. Let's say a person finds not a whole image, but just fragments of an image. Hari'ilu mutarin. So the din is that they're mutar, and the Gemara is going to explain, as Rashi says, Tachi havi shleimim, if it's complete, suffik, lo avdom, it's possible it was never used for service. Now, v'imtim solemer avdom, that it was, amor bitlum lakach shivra. Maybe once it was broken, we say that the person was mavatalit. So havis fake kula. So that's the notion that if it's a shalim, this is a question: was it served or not? And that's why it's questionable. However, if it's fake sveka, then it's mutter. Okay, that's how Rashi explains it. Fine. Matzah tamnis yad or tamnis regel. Let's say you found among this image a whole hand or leg, not the whole statue, but part of it. So hari'il asur shekayotz behen nevin, because a person could potentially worship just these things by themselves. Says the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, afilu shivri avodas kachavim. So even if it's the fragments of idol worship, so also the din is it's mutter. The Mishnah said hamoitze shivrit salam of an image. Here it literally says it's avodas kachavim. So don't tell me it's only the tselem davka, because maybe it was never worshipped. But even when it comes to broken pieces of avodas kachavim, in that situation, it's possible that it's also going to be mutter. Only it's selam. So I didn't feel shivri avodas kachavim. So why is there mention only an image? What was the seifa? The matzah tam the stand, tam this regal, hari'ilu asurin b'mishikiyos b'hen nevin. So therefore, it's just coming to tell you that if to compare to the seifa where it would be asur. However, the truth is, even the fragments of avodas kachavim is mutter. Tanan. Matzah tam the stand, tam this regal, hari'ilu asurin b'mishikiyos b'hen nevin. So we say it's considered to be asur. Gemara, why should we say if you found a hand or a leg that it's going to be asur? Mem alf on base. Vashvarim ninu, they're broken. So what's the problem? So Tirgum Shmuel ba'indin al basisan, that they're standing on its base. So because of that, as Rashi says, vadi palchilahu, then certainly it was used for avodah zarah. Idmar avodas kachavim. When it comes to avodas kachavim, shenishbara mi'aleha, let's say it broke on its own. So Rav Yochanan Amar Asura, Rav Shimon Lakish Amar Muteris. Rav Yochanan Amar Asura Dahalo Batla. The fact is, if the guy would have smashed the idol himself, then he was mavatal. But what happens if it just breaks by itself? So the fact that it broke by itself, who says the person was mavatal? Rav Shimon Lakish Amar Muteris. Mistam Abatum Mavatal. He probably was mavatal it, the fact that it broke by itself. Why? This reminds us of the whole story of Avraham breaking all the idols. Meimer armor, the guy should say to himself, "Yi nafshi lo atzla hu gavra matzle." He can't even save itself. Is he really going to save me? Right? The fact that it was smashed, obviously this has no power. So therefore, the machlokas Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan is that the avodah zarah broke by itself, whether that's considered to be mutter now. So Eis Rabbi Yochanan Rav Shimon Lakish, V'roish de goyim. So when it comes to the head of the goyin, which was a type of avodah zarah, rishtei kapois yadav karusois, and its two hands were cut off. The goyim, the ksiv, and this is actually, you can see the full pasuk is in the beginning of Shmuel Aleph. It says v'yashkimu b'boiker. So what happened was the Pelishtim, they stole the Aron. They took the Aron in the middle of battle. And then all of a sudden, they woke up in the morning. V'hine dagoin, which is their avodah zarah, which looked like a fish. Noifel lefanov, it broke by itself in front of the Aron. V'rosh dagon ushtei kapos yodav karusos, its head and its hands are chopped off. And that's it. So that's what happened, right? So we know that the story of their avodah zarah breaking and being destroyed. So the ksiv, and it's also written right afterwards. It says Al Kain lo yidrachu kohani dagoin v'chol haboyim beis dagoin. They didn't go to the this threshold where it happened until this day. Al Kain lo yiduchu kahani dagoin b'chul. So we see clearly the fact that it broke by itself. They still worship that area. So Amrulo Mishom Raya Hasam over there by this avodah zarah Shemanichen es hadagoin. They left the avodah zarah be'avden es hamiftan, and then all of a sudden they started worshipping the threshold. The Yamri Hachi Shavki Sari Ladagoin V'asa Ya'asiv Asivle al Hamiftan. And again they started worshipping the threshold of where it happened. Okay. So it's not that they were actually worshipping the avodah zarah anymore, because maybe it was worthless, the fact that it got destroyed. They started worshipping the threshold. Okay. So our Mishnah said that if you find these shattered pieces, they're mutter. Hashivri avodas kachavim asurin, which as we said before. Lo teima shivri avodas kachavim asurin el ema hatzlamim atzman asurin. It just means the image itself completely would be asur. Ustamak Rameir, which, as we said, Rameir is l'chumra because he's chayshom yuta. Says Rashi, v'yafa gav the asur b'tzlamim moide b'shivreihen. Even though when it comes to the image, he's strict. However, when it comes to the shivreihem, it's broken fragments, he matters. Rav Yochanan Rameir nishmul hu rabbanon. So according to Rabbanan, he said that Salamim Asurin, however, even though the Tselem is Asur, the actual complete image, even though it was only used once a year, in certain locations it's Asur everywhere, but Shivri Salamim Mutarin, so Rabbanan was Chavim Nami, he Asura b'Shivreha Mutarin. So we see clear it's mutter. No hachihash. You can't compare that to hasam over there. Ema abdum, ema lo abdum. It's a sveika. Maybe it was worshipped. Maybe it wasn't worshipped. Yim tim solemer abdum, ema bitlu. Maybe he was mavatalit. Avodas Chachamim, however, the case of Avodas Chachamim, Vadi Avdua, it was certainly worshipped. Mi Yemer debatla. The question is, who says once it was broken that it became batal? So Havi Safek Vavadai, Vein Safek Mosimidi Vadai. So now we have the famous sugya, which is also Psachim, Vein Safek Mosimidi Vadai, Vosan Yechaver Shemes. You have a Talmud Chacham who died, Veniach Magura Milea Paris, and he has all these fruits which potentially may have not been tithed. Even if it was on that day, we assume that it was already the Trubus and Meisters were separated. We definitely, fruits originally are tevel. It's only a suffix asrinhu, suffix lo asrinhu. There's a question: did he take off or not? So because he's suffix, must be divadai. No. Hasam over there. Vadai vavadaihu. This is a case where it was vadai tevel, but now it's vadai he's separate. Why? The vadai asrinhu. Could Rabbi Chanina choizah? Do you remember Rabbi Chanina choizah? Chazaka al chaver shenu moitze davar shenu masukin matachas yadai. He does it immediately. That is the status of a chaver. Of a Talmud Chacham, he doesn't delay. He does things immediately, and therefore there's not a case of ein suffix motzimidi vadai. It's not a case of a suffix. It's a vadai and a vadai. That's answer number one. V'imois ema mikar lo tvili. Maybe originally it's really not an issue of tevel and suffix was suffiku. Efshir de avad k'Rabbi Oishid. Do you remember ma'arim adam al tevuaso? A person can act in the form of trickery regarding his grains. V'machnisa b'moit shula, and he can bring it in its chaff. Kadesh dehei behem doicheles. So it's only fit for his animal. Ubaturim in a meiser, and this is the way to not be mechuyev in meiser. So it's possible it's not vadai meiser, it's a suffix meiser. So because of that, it's not a proof of ein suffix moitzimidi vadai. Of suffix is moitzimidi vadai. Okay, let's look at question TA23. Chaver shemes v'niach magura b'cheskes mesukana madua lo nema ein safek meiser moitzimidi vade tevel. Two answers. I got this right. It's a pretty simple answer question. Either there's a chazak the chaver would have separated it right away, or the ein zavade tevel the dilma ovid kravoishia the marim umachnas b'moitz, that it was separated in its chaff. Okay, let's look at question 2. Matzah shivi salamim, you found the broken pieces of this image. Or shivi was kachavim himasuna mutarj. So, when it comes to the pieces of the salamim, it's mutter, which is again beferish in our Mishnah, right? It says again hamoitzi shivit salamim hari elu mutarim. No one argues with that. Okay. However, when it comes to the shivri of kachavim, that's a machlokas Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Ayin Taisis the Ramaskal Oimer Shmuel. Okay. Let's maybe look at question TB 24. Moitze Shivit Salam and Mutarim Madua. Right? Why? So I wrote Haim Nechshav Kibatalim Ein Oibenoisim V'Loi Chashiv Haim Oibdim Mahen. Right? So shivrei, so either a mavakel or maybe right the sveika. Okay, but moitzi shivrit salamim. Let me just put this here. TB 24 is mutter, so it doesn't say why, but over here it's on mem alpha, mem alpha doesn't say why. But again, it's because this notion of it's a sveika, right? Right. Avodas Chachamim vada, or again, hasam amar avdom amar lo avdom, yim tem amar avdom amar bitulum, right? So maybe you're mavatalit. So that's TB 24. Okay. Weiter. So then we have another famous piece. It says like this. As we continue Ben Beis Amud Aleph, famous Gemara. Shel Matzik Echad. So there was this story of this maidservant of this very powerful person who was a Jew. Bari Moin. She'atila Nefel Labor. They took her Nefel, her stillborn, and put it into a pit. Uva Koyin, a Koyin came, Veheitzitz, and he was investigating to look into the matter. Leida Im Zachim Nekeva. He wanted to figure out, was this Nefel a Zach or Nekeva? And of course, we know that depending if it's a Zach or Nekeva will depend on Yimei Tumah, Yimei Tahara, 33 days, 66 days, 7, 14, all right, as brought down in Parshas Tazria. So, Uva Maisalef Nechachamim, Vetziruhu. They said that don't worry about it. It's tahor. Why? Ubordos. So you don't have to worry about becoming tameh, because there's no question that you have these weasels and animals that probably went and took the stillborn away. It's Matsuyin Shah. There's definitely a nefel that was put in there. Safik garuhu, safik lo garu. This has to do with like about chametz, right? Did an achbor take your chametz out of the house? So over here, it's a safik maybe or maybe wasn't taken out. Because the safik must be divadai. We're saying that it's as though it happened, even though it's a safik. But why do we do that? Why would we say that he's tar? So lo tema hetila nefilabor, ela ema hetila kimin nefilabor. What does that mean? It says Rashi, the suffix v'sfeik sfeikahi. There's also suffix. The shema lo nefil hoya. Maybe it wasn't even a nefil. El shpir mali ruach. It could have been some other thing which was actually not a stillborn. V'haleida im zachem nekevahu katani. It says he wanted to figure out if it was a boy or a girl. Obviously, it was an nefil. It was a suffix whether, in fact, it was a nefil at all. And even if you want to tell me it was a stillborn, alternatively, kivan shechulda ubardalas masuin sham vadi garu. We're going to stop there. But once you have these animals, there's no question that the remains were taken away, and therefore it's not a suffix and a vadai, but a vadai and a vadai.